All right, well, everyone, thanks so much for joining us on person and in line. And those of you that view the recording later, this is the next session for the Founder University Education Series. This one's a really exciting session. We've got two speakers today touching base on some really important topics. The first is going to be Nick Jones on developing your business model. Nick has over 25 years of experience as a principal and manager of various internet ventures. He's co-founded Arcane, Las Vegas venture firm. Nick established and managed Load.com, raised capital to develop strategic partners with companies like the NFL, Universal Music Group, and Analytic Resort. He spearheaded the successful creation and launch of Journal.com, personalized online journaling service with over 100,000 members. Nick is currently the Chief Development Officer at Disposable Corporation and sits on the board of various portfolio companies. He attended the U.S. Air Force Academy and earned a bachelor's degree in economics and management from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. So, been here for some time. What I was saying earlier is that as the Chief Development Officer at Disposable Corporation, I am responsible for a lot of the business development relationships, a lot of the pricing strategy. I help identify ways in which that we can land clientele, what the revenue model is going to be, how we need to adjust those models based off client feedback. It gives me a lot of insight into how the business is going to make money, as well as how we're going to project revenue over the course of the business operations. As a managing partner at Arcane, we are a boutique venture firm, and since 2013, and quite honestly, since before then, I have looked at thousands and thousands of businesses and had to identify how they make money. I can tell you, it's not just the founder, the story that matters to me, how they make money, and do I believe that that model is going to work impacts whether I believe their business is viable. As a serial entrepreneur and venture investor, I look at a ton of businesses. I've had a ton of business ideas on my own. I can tell you from personal experience that the idea that I started at the beginning and how we build customers usually evolves over time. And I'll share a little story from another venture investor from years ago who taught me a very valuable lesson from Sorensen Capital out of Salt Lake City. I have raised more than $27 million in seed stage and Series A. I'm hoping to close a term sheet in the next week, so that'll bump that up to about $42 million. What I do know is a lot of the discussions I have with potential investors is how we build clients, how we have ongoing revenue with clientele, and that usually affects your multiple in an acquisition. And I'm also an advisor for multiple tech incubators in New York, Texas, and California. And lastly, I am the lead fundraiser. So a lot of these discussions come up, and they're probably the most important points that I make in my presentation. So let's talk about what is a business model. When I was asked what topic I wanted to speak on, I chose developing your business model. Some of you that maybe have attended some of these lessons, I can't remember how long ago it was, but I had done a talk on storytelling. And I've always, and I still believe it, that storytelling is the most important thing, but as part of your story is how you make money. So your business model is really referring to how your business intends to make profit. And the things that you have to consider are really the products or services that the business plans to sell. Now, to be very upfront, the business models that I'm going to talk about and discuss are solely based on traditional businesses, either a product that you have or a service that you're offering. I am not going to cover the kid that is streaming Fortnite for 10 hours a day. I'm not going to cover social media influencers. And as much as I love Dude Perfect, I will not be talking about their awesome business and how they make money. Also, we're going to be discussing identifying your target market for business. A lot of times you'll hear, does the dog eat the dog food? What that really means is when you build a product, can you identify who that target business is that's going to buy your product? And the worst answer you can give to a venture investor is my product is for everyone. The other thing you need to consider in your business model are anticipated expenses, including your operational expenses. I'm going to tell you a quick little story. My son last year during the holidays was trying to figure out how to make money so that he could buy Christmas gifts. He decided that he was going to build paper boats to sell to people that were coming into our neighborhood. I was really proud of his entrepreneurial spirit.
But I asked him, well, where are you going to get the paper? Who's going to pay for that paper? What other things are you going to give him? And my heart swelled with pride as he told me he was getting the paper for free, as it was the paper that was being thrown away from teachers at school. And so he had figured out how he was going to acquire his assets to build his business and factor in labor cost. All of those things factor in, and we'll dive into that a little bit more. What I'm showing you on this screen are the 9 business models that I really think are relevant in most people's everyday lives. And I'm going to cover them pretty quick before I dive into what I think is the most important part of this talk. As you can read, there's a free business model. I look at those, and the example I give is YouTube and Facebook, where people can sign up for free, view content for free, and use that service for free. What does that mean? It means usually that you as the consumer are the product. And I'm sure most of you know that your data is being sold and people are monetizing your usage via algorithm. There's also the freemium business model. The one I mostly look at is LinkedIn and Slack. Those 2 services give you kind of a bite of the cookie or an access to something for free in hopes that they can hook you and convert you. I also look at product plus margin. I can tell you that the interesting thing about hard goods when you're dealing with product and margin is I had a company that I invested in called Upcart. You can look them up. And what they did is they would get product produced out of China or Vietnam. They would then have a landed cost. They would then sell that product at a wholesale price to someone like Costco or Lowe's or some other retailer. And then that retailer has to factor in that thinking in terms of what they can sell it as a retail cost. So the things you have to consider is my landed cost and the profit I make via wholesale going to allow my wholesaler to mark it up about 100% so that they can make money. You'll hear this most often described as a blocking point when you watch Shark Tank. You'll hear Mr. Wonderful or a lot of those guys talking about what is your landed cost? What are your bill of materials? And what does it cost to produce your product, including packaging and things of that nature? Those are things you have to consider. The price plus subscription models, your typical Netflix ADT model. The reason I showed you, I wanted to show you software as well as a service company in terms of installing hardware and then charging you a monthly subscription forever. Volume tiers is a business model that I've seen. I used to offer a web analytics business and a hosted email service where you charged based off set number of tiers, based off number of users and price, where they would get discounts based on volume. Commission affiliate is one of the bigger businesses that I've seen lately. It's basically, especially on the fundraising side. What I'm seeing right now is there are a lot of people working as marketers, working as consultants in order to help raise money for other businesses. Typically, they get paid either in a percentage of the total money raised, or they also get paid in some combination of money and warrants tied to the business success. Entry price plus subscription or support. I use a service for support called crisp.chat. I also know that many lawyers work under that business model. Entry price plus add-on. You can see iPhone, but it can go as low as $5 if you want to add toppings to your burger, as well as every car I seem to buy isn't as cool when I buy that base model. And then the last one, I have entry price plus disposable. Most of you are probably familiar with the story of Dollar Shave Club. And if you haven't noticed lately, HP does a wonderful job of milking you dry with the cost of ink. So what I really want to focus on, and I apologize if I took too long on that, is what I refer to as investor-friendly business models. What I'm going to be outlining are the 4 business models that I think have the easiest way or easiest opportunity of raising money. First is price plus subscription. That is a Netflix model. I'll get into that more specifically on the next slide. Entry price plus disposable. Again, this is Dollar Shave Club and HP. I think the freemium model is very much liked by venture investors, as well as entry price plus support. I'm actually going to use the company I work for, Data Buoy, to explain why that is so valuable and why we've been able to garner such interest from venture backers. So On the Netflix model, if you've been paying attention, they've obviously gone from very small with a DVD delivery business to a subscription model, and they continue to put out content and do really well. So the pros of this business is that it's easy to forecast. It's easy to identify how many users you're bringing in, what they're paying, and you can identify how much money they're going to make. Very easy for Wall Street analysts to identify where Netflix is going. There's also a very identifiable customer acquisition cost. So if you can identify exactly what that algorithm is to acquire a user, and you can figure out how to do that, then it's very easy to address what that lifetime value is of that customer and when you'll turn that into a profit. It's a very clear valuation projection. What I'm talking about there is what the next step of valuation that you should be raising money at. It's easy for people to believe that. And of course, for every investor, they love the monthly recurring revenue. It makes you a high acquisition target. The negatives are growth metric bias. If you've never thought of this, one of the challenges that you'll hear is we like businesses on subscription that are growing at a 20% month over month growth. We believe that if businesses that can grow at that rate are unicorns. So what if you're a 12% month over month growth? Does that mean you're not fundable? There is bias a lot of times when venture capitalists are looking at you. You're also very price sensitive. Why is that? If Netflix has a business model, they really don't have IP. Their biggest way to block competition is either through licensing or content creation and copyright. But other people can immediately compete. You see that in Hulu, you're seeing that with Apple TV. Now people only have so much time. Showtime, you're seeing partnerships where they're trying to make it so that you can get it all in one bundle. That price sensitivity is tied to economic status. It also tied to economic and micro and macroeconomic issues. And then it forces you to constantly innovate. If you're not coming out with new content, people don't care. Netflix has this issue, but you're going to see this on most subscription-based models. The next business that I think is that I really love is Dollar Shave Club. Now, full disclosure, I used to be a Dollar Shave Club member, but I dropped them. So I fall into the cons category of that business. But let's talk about the pros. Again, easy to forecast. One of the things that was interesting about Dollar Shave Club is when they were acquired, they were not a profitable business. So when they were acquired, they were projecting out over the next number of years that people like me were not going to leave them. What they didn't know is that I love that founder's really cool, funny, viral commercials. And once he left, that disappeared and there went my loyalty. As far as identifiable customer acquisition cost, you can also see exactly what it took to get me in and then what add-on services that I wanted to add to my subscription. You could also see how often and when I paused or when I skipped different things. You'll start to see trends in your user base. It's very easy to project a lifetime value. I'm sure on acquisition, they thought my lifetime value was going to last a decade. They were wrong. And add-on products and services, oddly enough, I have gone back and purchased different shaving creams and things like that. So there are other ways to make more money or increase your revenue as a positive business model. The negatives are the decreasing subscription bias. So in any given month, when you're looking at your projections, if people are dropping your service or they're not interested, it starts to identify a trend. If you're a public company, that will affect your stock price. These businesses are very much will succumb to economic sensitivity. If the job market is down or people not making money, they tend to cut these services almost immediately. They're also subject to trends. Dollar Shave Club was very popular. People talked about it, shared it with their friends. Once it became less popular, people dropped it. And if you're not familiar, early on, Dollar Shave Club had a couple of services. The company that acquired them started adding all of these different skin creams and things like that. So they were subject to constant innovation to keep people engaged with their brand. The freemium model is a business model that I've worked in most of my career from a software side. The pros are that you can grow rapidly through viral growth if you can build a business that can attract other users and your customers become your biggest advocates. It's very easy to project lifetime value because there's no cost for that person. The biggest challenge you have on projectable LTV is if the person's in your system, what is their level of engagement? You can falsify the value of your customer base just by saying we have registered users, but are they using the product? A great example of that would be the true value of Twitter. It's also easy to forecast that business as you grow. You can talk about how many people, what is their average friends, what are they bringing on? And if you can upgrade from free to paid, you can identify a very algorithmic annual recurring revenue model that helps you identify how much money you need to spend on marketing to actively increase your revenue numbers. The negatives, ironically, are also viral growth. It's difficult to forecast your customer acquisition cost. If you are someone who, there's always a initial customer base that are the first movers, and then getting into a certain percentage of that middle 60% of users that will then move second versus the laggards. That is very difficult to identify. Also, the cost of acquisition marginally gets higher and higher. Also, growth metric bias is played in because once they see your growth starting to drop off, the increased value of your business starts to decrease, and you're needing to constantly innovate in that business as well. The last one is entry price plus support. And I'm specifically going to talk about DataBuoy, which is the company that I work for currently. Over the last 7 years, we've had to identify different business models for different client types. So the challenges we have are, the pros are it's easy to forecast. We can tell you how many customers we have in the pipeline. We can give you an average cost of those customers based off industry, and then we can tell you exactly what the profit margins are in those markets. We also can identify very easily what it costs to acquire that users by things like, did we find that customer at a trade show? Did we find them via direct marketing? Or are we finding that by having salespeople that are going out and knocking on doors? Typically in our business, the lifetime value as a gunshot detection technology, since you're probably not familiar with DataBuoy, we provide acoustic-based gunshot detection. One of our clients is the Fremont Street Experience down the street from here. I cannot announce it yet, but we are going to be the first to be deployed on the Las Vegas Strip this year. We have some very big announcements that will come out in the next 30 days. We have projectable lifetime revenue. The beauty of that, our business, is once you install a service like this, it's not something you're going to turn off. And it's very easy for us to identify our annual recurring revenue, which helps investors properly project what we think the acquisition target will be when we sell the company. The negative is that there is no viral growth, right? This is one of those things where people will talk about these things, try to share it with people, but we're going to rely on word of mouth, and it goes very slowly in our business. It's very difficult to forecast if you're going to identify the time, how fast can we close a client? I have a client right now, they're probably going to close in 3 months. I have another client, we've been selling them for 2 years. It's a very difficult business to forecast. There's growth metric bias. If we don't have certain growth month over month or even quarterly, people start to think that there's not interest in our market. I'll give you a perfect example. In 2016, people would ask me, I don't really agree with your business. Is anyone buying gunshot detection? Do we actually need gunshot detection? Because no one would believe it. I don't think anyone would question that now, unfortunately, but current trends in the market are very good for our business. And typically it would require constant innovation unless you have IP advantage. What do I mean by that? For a business like DataBuoy, patents matter. Our patents affect our ability to charge a premium price, and we are less subject to price sensitivity. Overall, what I want to really make sure is clear as part of this talk is when you're identifying your business or you're looking to start a business, yes, you need to think about the story. You need to think about who's going to buy your product. But if you don't spend a lot of time thinking about how you're going to make money, what you're going to charge people, how this business is going to grow, and hopefully you're thinking about how your business is going to exit, all of those things in your business model impact your success your future ability to grow, and if anyone's going to buy you out. This concludes my talk. I think the last I'd like to say is, may the 4th be with you.
Nick, thank you so much. Questions we have here. How do you feel about multiple revenue streams reflected in the business model of a pre-seed startup? Or do you want to see a single stream initially? So I guess it's a matter of focus there.
Yeah, so I think the way I would answer that is, so as an investor, I like multiple business models unless it's based on multiple products. Okay, so I'll give you an example. We're talking to a major family office right now. Our core business model is shot detection, but using the same technology, we can offer you panic button capability. Those things tie hand in hand because it's using the same hardware unit. So it doesn't look like it's a completely different service. It's all tied together. But if you're going to go out and say, I make money doing software, but we also do customer support, which is very labor heavy, it starts to become very challenging. So now all of a sudden, as an investor, I'm worried if you're distracted and if you're spread too thin. I'll tell you one funny story. I met with a guy in Washington, D.C. pre-COVID, and he was telling me how he was going to acquire 5 different companies and offer 5 different services to all customers. And I said, okay, so you're going to boil the ocean. And by the way, who's going to do all the installation? And he looked at me with this blank stare on his face, like he had not considered that. And so, I mean, look, we didn't even get out of dinner before I knew that wasn't something we should consider, but everyone's going to really worry about your focus. So really think about if that spreads you too thin.
Excellent, thanks. Next question. LinkedIn is a B2C to B, two-sided marketplace, question mark. How do I make this simple for investors to understand? So I guess how do you explain a B2C to B marketplace?
Yeah, it's really tough too, because I've had businesses like that in the past. I think what you really need to identify in a two-sided market is, what is the market that you're going to go after first? What is the most important market? I think if you can identify that you're going to land the one side of the customer, so maybe it's going to be the enterprise, but maybe it's the users or employees that upgrade to the service or something of that nature. You really have to show a path that makes sense, that doesn't have a bottleneck that relies on your business that now requires a lot of manual input or a lot of labor. I think, like in the case of LinkedIn, the value to me is that as a business, I needed a place where my post about my company wasn't also tied next to a post about someone's pet or their food, right? So LinkedIn became very quickly that professional space. But in addition to that, they built tools where I could promote my company, do a lot of different things where people could get into it, but they get me individually because now they have this premium service. I think if you can identify that path from user or customer acquisition to revenue, then honestly, people look right past that two-sided market problem usually.
This is a question from David. Did you integrate value pricing before beginning designing your product?
Yeah, so I can tell you that if he's talking specifically about Data Buoy Corporation, that is a DARPA-founded technology. When we're lucky. Okay, so that technology had $20 million invested in it from the Department of Defense to help do the R&D and things of that nature. But when we're going to contract manufacturers or we're trying to figure out how to get to first cost, what we've started to identify is how are we going to reduce the actual hardware costs so that doesn't become a barrier to entry, but then how do we drive the user into the software side of it where our margins are highest. As we're identifying a lot of those things, we're really trying to figure out what it is our customers are looking for. And I'll give you a perfect example. If we're working with a casino, usually money is not an issue, but if we're working with a school or a university or a municipality, they have a set amount of grant dollars or government funding in order to deploy a service. And usually that has to cover a certain number of years. that is a capital expenditure business model versus an operational expenditure business model, which I would prefer to be in by putting gunshot detection in every Starbucks and 7-Eleven. So as we're looking at the value pricing in terms of our product, we're tying that a lot to the hardware and how we're going to distribute that over time to our customer. I hope that actually answered your question. I apologize if I got around it.
The question, for those of you that sound cut out for just a minute, the question was one that David posited is, did the speaker integrate value pricing before beginning the design of his product? Any additional questions? Okay, another from Ben. LinkedIn had extremely patient investors who were willing to wait for critical mass in workers/users before they went for the money. How would you feel if I said I'm only focusing on one side of the market at a detriment to revenue? I want users first, exclamation mark.
Yeah, I think it really depends, right? Are you first to market? I think that's something that you have to really consider. LinkedIn was first and biggest. They did a good job of establishing themselves as the leader in that space. Obviously, the investors that came in and acquired them after saw that they had built up that mass. You could say the same thing for Amazon. I remember after 9/11, Amazon stock was extremely low. I talked to existing investors in my startup at that time, and they asked me, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, they're the beast in the market. They're probably going to end up winning in the end." And based on that one recommendation, this guy went out and bought like $400,000 worth of stock. And years later, he told me the best investment I made was in your software company because you told me to buy Amazon. And he made millions of dollars on that investment. But people were willing to be patient because they were the company that was identifying that. I would tell you, if you think you're going to be the competitor to Twitch, or you think you're going to build another Google, or you're going to be last to the market, unless you have some true innovation like a ChatGPT sort of advantage, it's going to be very difficult for people to buy into that. But obviously people felt the same way about AI and content creation that you're seeing with ChatGPT, and people are clearly willing to wait on that. Thanks. Appreciate
Nick, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We're here from Kim Snyder and how to score your business with metrics like the Golden Knights. So true Vegas person here. We're really excited to have her. Kim D. Snyder is a business strategy expert and thought leader that works with business owners and leaders for repeatable results. She leverages her Fortune 500 management consulting experience of systems and small business owner scrappiness. Kim is a keynote speaker, author, and a podcast host. She resides here in Las Vegas with her husband, Rob, and is a recovering perfectionist and a gadget girl. To find out more about Kim, please visit her website, kimdsnyder.com. And with that, Kim, offer you to take it away. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. Happy to be here. And my experience is a little bit different than Nick's. So this is good. You guys get a perspective. Let me share what we're going to cover right now. Oops. So we're really going to look at 3 areas here today. I'm going to cover them. One of them is KPIs that you need to track. The second one is how often you need to do it. And then the third one is what type of systems. And what I'm going to do is tell you a little bit about me so I can give you a frame of reference. I am a business owner. I've been a business owner off and on for years. I've been an employee off and on for years, and I've been a contractor off and on for years. When I work with businesses, it is typically their established businesses because I like to optimize. But I like to work with startups because they have the ability to be more flexible and start their system sooner so that it gives them options later. Cover the 3 topics. But let me give you some frame of reference of where we're going. So I've developed a business model called More, and we have these different areas. And so when I give you pieces of it, I want you to understand you need all the pieces, or you need to look at all the pieces of your business, just not one, because they all play together. The areas we're looking at today are revenue, and specifically in reporting. And then in the efficiency area, we're looking at, I call them sexy systems, because who wants to be boring with systems? Okay, first one. KPIs to track if your business is on track, or even if your game is working. So some of you will laugh. If you're not a sports enthusiast, we'll get some examples for you. But what does baseball have? Baseball has batting average, right? That's a quick way to track how good a batter you are. Boxing, knockouts, technical knockouts. What are some of the other ones that you see, whether it's sports, right? There's time on ice if we're looking at hockey. There's wins and losses in tennis. There are numbers in your bank account, right? They give you, sometimes they give you a full picture, sometimes they give you a sort of a picture. And it depends on reference, frame of reference, and timing. That's why we want to use the metrics in business. So if we just kind of step back, and it doesn't matter what stage of business you're in, this is a really good place for you to look at if you are starting out or if you're already in business, like go back and look, who am I targeting? Who is my target market? What is the pain that you're solving for them? And how are you going to help them? Like what product or service is going to provide that for them? The cool thing about this is we can keep it really simple and say, okay, that's your target market. Second item is your sales, and how you help them is really the customer service. Well, guess what? If we start looking at metrics for those areas, again, I'm keeping it super simple. You want to start simple and build upon. We want to start looking at marketing numbers, sales numbers, customer service, and either cost of goods sold or cost of services, right? Depending on the type of business or one of the 9 business models that Nick shared. What are some specifics? Yeah, key performance indicator, sorry. Key performance indicator, so it is the one number that will help you determine what status your business is in, right? Just like a batting, your average batting order. So for marketing, there's going to be a couple that you should start with. And I always want to say you want to start with your source. So where are you getting your numbers? And you want to know your conversion, right? So if you're going to go place an ad, you want to know how much the ad's going to cost. You actually want to have a dollar return. You want to see conversions or leads from that. You need to see something. And sorry, likes don't really count. I hate to break it to you. Now, they will reiterate, and it's always hard to have this discussion, but marketing is hard dollars. Like if you're not getting return on areas, that's why you want to track it, because at the beginning, or even if you want to experiment, you are going to have different channels for marketing. You want to see which ones work. So you need to make sure that you're always tracking your marketing, because if you do ads, you might be doing sponsoring a softball team. You might be, speaking at a conference. If you can track those leads, you want to see which one is the most profitable for you to convert to your customers.
And that actually is, kind of leads to this next question from Sean. How do you identify if a metric provides real value instead of just a vanity metric? And you kind of answered it already, but if you have anything additional to add to that?
I don't. I guess as long as you can track it back to sales, it's going to track back to $1 for the most part, right? Likes, you can't track back to $1 for the most part.
And then the question kind of related to KPIs is, how would you, define the difference between metrics and KPIs? Maybe KPIs are a metric, I guess.
They are, and I kind of use them interchangeably. Not everybody knows KPIs, but they are. So, ultimately, they're key performance indicators. So I guess ultimately they are a subset of metrics, because there are other metrics that you can use, but I kind of use them interchangeably.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah. So sales. All right, if we start looking at sales, we want to know, not only do we want to know how many we have, but I actually like to track the number and the dollar value, especially if you have multiple products or you have upsells, again, depending on your business model, because it helps you see maybe you're selling more of one or higher ticket dollars, higher ticket items. So for sales, I like to do dollars and numbers. And then those are probably the 2 biggest. Again, you can expand and go crazy, but if you look at this from like an owner KPI or scorecard, you're going to have one page similar to the diagram where you want to see everything. Then you can dig into those other specific areas, and or your team should have the details to support those areas, right? But you as a business owner want to make sure that everything's moving as it should.
Chat, do metrics change over the lifetime of a starter? Example, pre-product versus product in the marketplace.
Yes, and I hope on the positive side they change, yes. And they will, right? So Nick and I talked on Monday, and he said, businesses will pivot, I think 3 to 5 times, right? In 3 to 5 years. And that means that your metrics might change because the things that you were starting to track, well, let me say, the things that you were starting to report might vary because of the way your business model changed. So maybe you started out with more product focus and then you went to more service based. So you're going to have a lower cost of goods sold. Well, you won't because labor is expensive, but you will track different items, right? So that's really helpful.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And another definitions question. What would be the difference between OKRs and KPIs?
You know, I think they're very similar, and OKRs are newer, and I always forget the exact name.
Objectives.
Objective key results, I think. Yeah. Okay, so now we have KPIs, metrics, and KPIs. Let's just call them all the same for today's discussion.
Good.
Got it.
Thank you.
All right, customer service metrics. These ones are kind of twofold or two areas. So, well, maybe three. Refunds or repeat buys, right? Again, if that serves your business model. Two is what people say about you publicly. So whether it means on Yelp, other review sites, those are reviews, right? And so maybe there's only two I was thinking of, right? People purchase, so purchase or refund, and public reviews are very, very helpful. And then finally, either cost of goods sold, cost of services, and depending on the type of the business, you know, if you're manufacturing, of course, you're going to have hard product. You might have supply chain. If you're more professional or more service-based, it's going to be labor. If you have intellectual property, right, you're going to have some of that. So there's some metrics in there that you can track, and it depends. But generally, you're going to look at margin. You're going to look at sort of your fixed cost and your hard cost, but you want to look at your margin, your operational margin, and your gross margin. Again, high level. You could look and go deep on all these, but as an owner, if you look at about these 10 metrics, it's a really good place to start. Here's an example of a couple of dashboards or KPIs. And I like these because as an owner, what I talk to my business owners about is one of them likes to hike. I said, if you're in the hiking and you want to come down for 15 minutes, check on your business, you have the internet service, and you look at this dashboard, is this going to tell you what you need to know about your business to make sure everything's on track? Right? And that's going to vary some, but they're going to be in those 4 categories that we discussed. But you can look at these and see that these will visually and quickly tell you where you're having issues. There's a story that when I was working for, it's actually a smaller company, but they were working for a large consumer packaged good company, and they were an e-commerce site. And they knew their metrics so well that when my CEO was in the meeting with their CEO, he said, oh, I gotta go. What happened is he was looking at the metrics of his website and he knew something was wrong because he knew his conversion rate. He knew the traffic hits to the T. And that was an important metric. He left, didn't matter any other business meeting, he had to go fix that problem, right? So if you kind of think in that context, if one of these numbers failed, would your business be out of business? So I've also heard whatever's on here, either, you know, you're fired if it's not fixed, or you're going to lose your business if it's not fixed. So what would give you that health check of your business? My final thought is data is king, so capture it all. So back to your question, Logan, what happens if you change your model? Well, you probably will. Capture all the data. You don't have to report on it, right? So make sure you have it all. So download it, look at your Google Analytics, look at your advertising, look at your marketing, look at your sales, capture it, make sure you have it available. So when you change, you can actually go back and look at the trends based on your new model. Okay, there's my presentation. Okay, second one is how often to check these numbers. And this one's a really quick answer, which is generally, so we used to check them monthly, but the issue is that we can get data more readily available. And so you actually want to check weekly because you can make adjustments throughout the month if you get them more frequent. That's for most businesses. If you're e-commerce, you're going to be checking daily or hourly, right? Because you're going to have the metrics again, just like that example I shared with that CEO. He knew his metrics so well that when they didn't report in that hour, he was up looking at them, right? Some of us might not be at that stage. We might not have that amount of data, but if you can start looking at your metrics weekly, it means that you have time to adjust your numbers so that you can hit your month-end goals. And then the other number that you're going to look at frequently is your sales, right? Sales is golden. So you're typically meeting with your sales team or they're reporting to you at least once or twice a week, if not 3 times. Typically Monday, stand up, see what's working on, maybe midpoint check, and then see how you closed out deals.
There is a question online for sales. How important is it to know when your customers fall out of the funnel?
Super important because you can fix it, right? So you need to know, again, that's where your metric is, like where are they failing? So you know what it is, like it could be in a video, it could be in the process, it could be in the conversation, and that's why you need to track that. Third area is the best ways to track the numbers. So this is in the efficiency area because it really is about how do you get the numbers quickly to make a timely decision about your business. So some rules of thoughts here for systems, and because I don't know everybody's business, here's some standards or here's some guidelines to use, which are, always use industry standard software. I'm a gadget girl. I'm on AppSumo all the time buying cool stuff. I'm not going to run my business on all those right away because one, they're not proven. I'm not going to go put my livelihood on something that's not fully tested. Also, I need to make sure I get support. It's a live system, right? So make sure it's an industry standard. Also, make sure it's an industry standard because you need to have integrations with other software. So if it's not industry standard, you can't integrate with industry standard. And when we're talking the game of data, because you need that for your metrics, it's all about integrations. Paid, not free, I talked about that. Excel is okay at the beginning. It's a great way to test out an approach. How does my data, like how am I going to structure this? But get off of it as soon as you can. When I started one of my businesses about 10 years ago, I got my accounting system right away, which is not normal, but I know systems and I didn't want to have to figure it out later. So make sure that you're doing that because the numbers actually were able to tell me where I wanted to spend my money and where I didn't. Okay. Systems are an investment in your business, right? So treat them as such. It also means that you can scale and hire people based on that. If you're using standard systems, it's much easier for me to say, hey, does anybody know Infusionsoft? Any of the core applications out there, but hey, do you know Joe's, back office system that he's, doing in his garage? No, I can't hire for that. I can hire for the other one. So when you use industry standard, it means you can hire people because they already know the system. Also, systems don't call in sick. So systems are good because they'll give you the results. People are better because they can actually help you interpret and analyze the results. So make sure you're using them the right way. So again, a review. This is just part of how you need to look at areas of your business, right? Like Nick talked about business models, making sure you get set up, or maybe you have a combination, or maybe you need to switch. By looking at the metrics, it will help you decide which way to go and understand that the more data you can collect, the more you can make decisions later on the best choice, because you might be collecting data, but not reporting on it on stuff that you didn't know that was happening in your business. So when you make the shift, you've got the data. There's my information. If you reach out to me on LinkedIn, just remind me where you saw me. Connect with me anyways, but if you have a question, that's probably the best place.
Kim, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you again for joining you both, Nick and Kim, for joining us, lending their valuable time here. That's really informative. I anticipate you're going to get a number of people reaching out and contacting you once this recording is distributed to the members, but a lot of people find a lot of value in going back and referencing those recordings. So we really appreciate it. But again, thank you both so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And everyone online and in room, thank you for joining us.